Think about the last time your phone buzzed with an urgent notification late at night. Your heart rate immediately spiked, your breathing became shallow, and suddenly your entire body was on high alert. We live in a world that constantly tricks our biology into thinking a predator is chasing us. We are marinating in our own stress hormones day after day.
It is a fascinating and, frankly, terrifying reality. Biologically speaking, modern humans are trapped in a chronic survival mode. Our nervous systems are beautifully evolved to handle acute threats like running from danger or surviving a harsh winter, but they were never designed for the relentless, low-grade urgency of modern life. The traffic jams, the endless emails, the sleep deprivation. The body registers all of it as danger, and that biological toll accumulates.
And we pay a heavy price for it, right? We see it everywhere. Anxiety, systemic inflammation, chronic fatigue, metabolic issues, and just this overwhelming emotional exhaustion. But what if there was a built-in override? A hidden biological highway that could literally tell your entire system to stand down, relax, and heal.
That override actually exists, and it is revolutionizing how we understand human health. It is called the vagus nerve. And it is arguably the most important, yet historically overlooked, communication network in the human body.
Which brings us to today's deep dive. We are talking about biohacking the vagus nerve, exploring mind-bending clinical breakthroughs, and figuring out how to master our own autonomic nervous system. So let's start with the anatomy of this hidden network. I've heard it referred to as the wandering nerve.
That is exactly what the word vagus means in Latin wandering, and it certainly earns that name. It originates right at the base of the brainstem and cascades all the way down through the neck, branching intricately into the heart, the lungs, the digestive tract, and the abdominal organs. It is the absolute core of our parasympathetic nervous system.
The rest and digest system.
Precisely. If the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response, is the gas pedal of a car, the vagus nerve is the brake. It is responsible for slowing the heart rate, lowering blood pressure, regulating digestion, and bringing the body back to a state of safety, repair, and emotional regulation. In many ways, it acts as the body's internal stabilization system.
I love that car metaphor. But looking at modern society, it feels like we've all got our foot slammed on the gas pedal and the brake line has been completely severed. We are stuck in sympathetic overdrive.
That is the crux of the modern health crisis. Short-term sympathetic activation is actually healthy and necessary. It makes you sharp and alert. But when you are continuously stimulated by your environment, the stress circuitry never fully shuts down. The nervous system loses its flexibility. It forgets how to apply the brake. And when the body is biologically stuck in defensive mode, it simply cannot repair itself.
So how do we know if our brake line is actually working? I see everyone these days obsessively checking their smartwatches and talking about their HRV. Heart rate variability, is that our window into how well the vagus nerve is functioning?
It is the best non-invasive window we currently have. HRV measures the microscopic variations in time between your heartbeats. Counterintuitively, you do not want your heart beating like a perfect, rigid metronome. You want variability.
Wait, so a slightly irregular rhythm is actually a sign of health?
Exactly. High variability means your nervous system is highly adaptable. It means the vagus nerve is actively communicating with the heart, constantly applying and releasing the brake based on your immediate environment. A high HRV indicates a resilient, flexible autonomic nervous system. Lower HRV, on the other hand, strongly correlates with stress overload, poor recovery, sleep disruption, and systemic strain.
So when we look at our wearables, we aren't just looking at fitness data. We are indirectly measuring our nervous system's resilience. But let's say someone is looking at their data and their HRV is completely tanked. Their nervous system is dysregulated. I know the clinical world is doing some sci-fi level research right now to fix this. What does vagus nerve stimulation actually look like in a modern medical setting?
The clinical explosion in this field is staggering. We are moving past just treating symptoms and going straight to the source code of the nervous system. Researchers are now actively investigating targeted vagus nerve stimulation for severe epilepsy, treatment-resistant depression, PTSD, migraines, and severe autonomic dysfunction.
Are we talking about surgical implants, like a pacemaker but for the nervous system?
Historically, yes. Small devices implanted under the skin that send mild electrical pulses directly to the nerve. But the real breakthrough right now is non-invasive stimulation. We are seeing devices you can place on your neck or even in your ear because a specific branch of the vagus nerve reaches the outer ear that deliver a gentle microcurrent to stimulate the nerve externally. The goal is simple but profound: to manually recalibrate a dysregulated nervous system.
That is incredible. You are literally zapping the nerve to reboot the system. It's like unplugging a frozen router and plugging it back in to restore the connection.
That is a remarkably accurate way to conceptualize it. By artificially simulating vagal activity, we can trick the brain into recognizing that the body is safe, which triggers a massive cascade of healing responses.
Which brings up something really profound. I was reading about a concept called the inflammatory reflex. In traditional medicine, we usually treat physical pain and emotional stress as two completely separate things. But the vagus nerve seems to prove that they are intimately connected at a biological level.
This is where modern neuroscience meets immunology, and it changes everything we thought we knew. The vagus nerve continuously monitors the body for inflammation. When it detects inflammatory markers, it sends a distress signal to the brain, and the brain sends a signal back down the vagus nerve to suppress that excessive inflammation. It is a brilliant, closed-loop regulatory system.
But if our vagus nerve is weak because we are chronically stressed, does that mean the inflammation just runs wild?
Exactly. Chronic psychological stress weakens vagal tone, which effectively turns off the body's natural anti-inflammatory brakes. Emotional stress literally becomes biological inflammation. The body is continuously translating your psychological states into physical physiology.
That is heavy. It really makes you think about the hidden cost of our modern lifestyles. We hustle, we grind, we sacrifice sleep for productivity, and we think the only penalty is feeling a little tired the next day. But in reality, we are systematically dismantling our immune system's ability to regulate itself.
The biological tax of modern life is systemic inflammation. But the beautiful counterpart to this is that the human body contains built-in natural mechanisms for self-regulation. We do not always need high-tech medical devices to stimulate the vagus nerve.
Right, let's talk about the natural biohacks, because it seems like ancient humans figured this out thousands of years before we had wearable tech or neurostimulators. How can we activate this calming switch naturally?
It turns out many ancient practices are fundamentally vagal stimulation techniques. Slow, deep, diaphragmatic breathing is the most direct way to activate the vagus nerve. When you intentionally slow your breathing, particularly making your exhales longer than your inhales, you are mechanically stimulating the nerve in your chest, sending a massive safety signal to your brain.
So, when someone tells you to take a deep breath when you are panicking, they aren't just giving you psychological advice, they are giving you a neurological directive.
Precisely. Other practices include cold water exposure, which triggers the mammalian dive reflex and strongly activates the vagus nerve. Humming, chanting, and singing work incredibly well because the nerve passes right through the vocal cords. Even social bonding, deep conversation, and laughter stimulate vagal pathways.
It is almost poetic, the very things that make us feel most human, singing, laughing, connecting with others, are the exact same things that biologically heal us. It makes you wonder if ancient rituals, like chanting in temples or communal singing, were actually intuitive forms of group nervous system regulation.
I firmly believe they were. Evolution selected for behaviors that maintain autonomic balance. We just lost touch with them in the modern era.
There is one more connection we have to make, and it might be the most complex one: the gut. We hear so much about the gut-brain axis these days. How does the vagus nerve fit into the microbiome conversation?
It is the physical fiber optic cable connecting the two. You can think of the gut as a massive sensory organ. The trillions of bacteria in your microbiome produce neurotransmitters, metabolites, and inflammatory signals. The vagus nerve detects all of this ecological data and transmits it directly to the brain.
So my gut bacteria are essentially texting my brain via the vagus nerve.
Yes, and while it is a two-way street, surprisingly, about 80% of the fibers in the vagus nerve send information from the body up to the brain rather than the other way around. The brain is constantly listening to the gut to determine how you should feel emotionally. If your gut is inflamed from poor nutrition or stress, the vagus nerve tells the brain to feel anxious, sluggish, or depressed.
That completely flips the script on mental health. We tend to think anxiety is just a psychological issue in our heads, but it might actually be a biological distress signal from our digestion traveling up the vagus nerve.
Which is why true emotional stability requires internal biological harmony. You cannot separate nutrition, gut health, and emotional resilience. The nervous system is deeply ecological. It relies on the environment inside your body just as much as the external environment you live in.
This paints such a futuristic yet grounding picture of medicine. If we can track HRV in real time, stimulate the vagus nerve to lower inflammation, and optimize our gut to send calming signals to the brain, what does the future of healthcare actually look like?
The future of medicine is autonomic intelligence. We are moving toward continuous, real-time monitoring of our stress load, respiratory patterns, sleep quality, and recovery dynamics. Instead of waiting for a heart attack or an autoimmune disease to appear, AI-guided systems will help us regulate our stress responses before the disease ever manifests. Because autonomic imbalance usually precedes physical illness by years, if not decades,
We are essentially going to use advanced technology to teach ourselves how to be biologically human again, to remind our bodies how to rest before they break.
that is the ultimate goal. True health is not merely the absence of disease, it is teaching the nervous system how to feel safe again. Because resilience is not simply a psychological mindset, it is a neurological state.
Resilience is a neurological state. I cannot think of a more profound thought to leave off on. Deep inside all of us, there is this silent, wandering neural network, constantly listening, constantly evaluating safety, and constantly trying to protect us. Maybe it is time we finally started listening back.
It is the most important conversation you can have with your own body.
The world might be moving fast, but your biology still holds the ultimate calming switch. Just take a breath. This is Oxyzen Health Intelligence.